Live from all around the world and from Melbourne, Australia, this is the Nikki Colombo Show, and I'm your host, Nikki Colombo, and welcome everybody tonight. We have a special guest. Hillary Raimo is coming on in a minute, and just before we get to that beautiful, strong woman that's coming on here that's got so much knowledge, she's like a library on legs, I have a very special announcement to make. I have two of the biggest heavyweights coming on the show in the next couple of weeks. I can't believe it, but they actually said yes, and I'm so excited. We have Jordan Maxwell coming on in the next couple of weeks. What an amazing person he is, and it's an absolute honour to have him on my show. And in February, the one and only David Icke is coming on my show, and boy, is that going to be absolutely fantastic. I can't wait for that. David Icke was one of the pivotal points in my spiritual awakening and took me on a journey that was just brought me to here, which is absolutely fantastic. Very happy about that. Now let's talk a little bit about our guest coming on tonight, guys. Hillary Raimo is actually a good friend of mine, and we've been friends for quite a long time, and she was very helpful in helping me to discover what was going on with me with the, I discovered I was actually having an alien love bite. And if you haven't listened to my last week's show with James Bartley, we go into a little bit more about that and the alien love bite, and Eve Lorcan, who has actually written a book about it, and it was absolutely fantastic. And also Hillary also helped me when she said to me, have you seen the movie Looper? And I said, no, I don't know anything about the movie Looper. And the very next day, right under, at the very bottom of my CD rack, which doesn't have any little racks in it anymore because they all kind of fell out and they were all stacked on each other. And to get to any of my DVDs, you actually lift up the whole set of DVDs, and guess what was right down the bottom of my CD rack sticking out 1 inch after I was speaking to Hillary was the movie Looper. And I understand now that all these things were happening because we have some timelines shifting and changing and the Mandela effect happening. And I kid you not, this movie, guys, it manifested into my house. I was definitely meant to watch it, and I was absolutely blown away. So Hillary Raimo began her radio career in 2005 on WVK2 1240 AM terrestrial talk radio in upstate New York, and I'm so blessed to have her here tonight because I know that it's midnight in New York. So hello to everybody in New York. Midnight for all you people staying up late. And in 2008, she began her broadcasting career online with Achieve Radio, where she continued for the remainder of her radio career. At times, Hillary would guest host or help produce or a short run on other networks, including the World Punja Network, BBS Radio, and Capricorn Radio. In 2016, Hillary started Yin Radio TV, an online content platform, and began to mentor inspiring radio hosts, many who began their own shows soon after. And Hillary is currently the president of the Bethlehem Art Association in Delmore, New York, and CEO of LBE Publishing LLC. With a background in business and healing arts, Hillary weaves her intuitive magic in all she does. She is the great-granddaughter of the late Leslie Holloway, psychic to Eleanor Roosevelt, and former director of the AFSC. Hillary continues her grandfather's legacy of tarot and financial forecasting as a political psychic. Her predictions for the past 18 years in her seasonal writings have helped translate astrological and intuitive energies and have been appreciated by readers worldwide, including myself. I can tell you right now, when I've read some of her articles, it has actually helped me for the next week on what is coming in and how to deal with that. So after 13 years in alternative media, publishing 3 books, numerous articles and interviews later, here I am, she says, with a unique perspective on world events. My time as a radio host also brought many experiences my way. I met extraordinary people and was privileged to have an hour conversation a week for a decade, give or take a few weeks off. And it was part of my spiritual growth, to say the least. I found myself exploring the Great Pyramid in Giza, the old ruins of Machu Picchu and Stonehenge. It brought me to the Temple of the Sun and the Moon at Teotihuacan. I'll get her to pronounce that properly when she comes on. The megalithic sites of Ireland, and eventually to the Native American sites nestled deep in the American Southwest. As I followed my heart, I was brought to many fulfilling and beautiful adventures, now mostly photographs and memories. They still continue to inspire my work. I seek to instill beauty and power, oh boy does she ever, into my artwork, poetry, writing and artistic projects. As a painter and photographer, Hillary never sees the world the same way twice. Her work has been shown in Albany Centre, the Albany Centre Gallery, the Spring Street Gallery, Saratoga Springs, the Yaddo exhibit, Taking Flight, curated by Tristan Covin, and is regularly featured in the travel exhibits of the I can't even say that word, Schenectady Photographic Society. Recently, Hillary's work earned an honourable mention award at the 2018 Fence Select exhibit hosted by the Art Centre of the Capital Region. She credits her art residency at Atelier de la Rose at Montecabura, France, for opening her artistic eye and changing how she seeks power and beauty in her images. And I can tell you right now, guys, I have seen them and they are absolutely mind-blowing. Multi-medium artist Hillary hopes to instill a purpose to her images, whether they be paintings or photographs. Hillary will be studying at the Pulitzer Prize winning photographer Idris M. Sherez. So welcome to the show, Hillary. It is absolutely wonderful to have you here. Woohoo!
Well, thank you so much, Nikki. It's great to be here. It's been a long time since we've talked. How are you?
I'm absolutely fantastic. I'm blessing it. Who would ever think that I would be here having you as a host on my radio show years later after I discovered all that stuff, and I am eternally grateful for all that stuff. I'm so glad that I contacted you at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was thinking about you and I thought, what's going on here? And you tried to buy the book for me and then you couldn't buy the book for me and all this stuff happened, and it's just absolutely amazing that I'm actually here and doing something that I absolutely love. So thanks to you, sweetheart.
Well, I'm really glad you're doing it because we need lots of powerful voices in the world, and you're definitely one of them, sweetheart.
Yeah, thank you very much. And so are you, very powerful women, and we like to stick together, us powerful women, don't we? So tell us, darling, what's been happening? I know you've had a complete change and you've grown, and you have written a wonderful book called The Transcripts of the Hillary Raimo Show. Is that right?
Well, I released my third book this year, late spring, called The Hillary Raimo Show Transcripts. And it's funny because that was actually a working title as I was spending the year prior to its release putting it together. And I decided to keep it because it just made sense. I had a very successful show run for 13 years. I was on Achieve Radio, as you mentioned, but I did start my career on terrestrial radio in upstate New York and then ventured out into some other networks along the way for short runs or productions. And radio has always had a very special place in my heart, and I feel that over the years of my run, information was extremely important and part of the reason why my show existed. And I felt very strongly that using the platform to get information out there was one of the things that I needed to do. So writing the book and going back through all of my content for 13 years was quite a task, to be honest with you, but
I bet, yeah.
It also gave me a tremendous sense of what was important for readers now, because here we are in 2018, and we're looking at some very dynamic things happening on the collective platforms. And so the information my guests brought to the platform was very relevant to things that were going on now, and it gives a very interesting hindsight to some of the topics in the industries that my guests were from. So I wanted to put together a book that would enable a reader to go through the information in a different way than listening to a radio show. When you listen to a radio show, you're caught up in the personalities, you're caught up in the voice, you're caught up in trying to keep up with what's going on in the conversation. And it's not the same thing as reading the information in a book where you can stop and you can dissect it, research it, digest it, and let it really sink in.
Yeah, go off on a tangent and research that particular topic and then come back to the next chapter that you've written. Yes, that's what I do.
Yeah, and I also built it so that you could really open it up at any point and read it, and each chapter stands on its own as its own shining conversation. But there is a very deliberate chapter 1 to 20. There's a very deliberate layout of the topics and the conversations, and it was very important that as the reader goes through the book, for me, that they had an experience and that they would go through a journey of sorts through the information. And David Icke, speaking of David Icke in your introduction, was one of my most intriguing early on guests, and I had started the radio show because I had personally gone through most of his work. I had read his books. I was told to go read his books by somebody that I admired very much, and God, if she hadn't told me to go read those books, I probably would have shut them right on the first cover and ran away as fast as I could.
Yeah.
Because the information, as you know, and as people who are familiar with David's work know, it's difficult work to get through. It's difficult because it breaks open your psyche and really lets in a whole nother perspective of what's going on in the world. But now, fast forward almost a decade later, here we are, and I'm seeing a lot of the things that David talked about. Even on my show over the years, we did 4 shows together, and one of his transcripts is in my new book. And I see a lot of things coming true that he predicted or he talked about in his book. And I'm, like, for example, the microchip agendas are moving forward full speed. And he was really one of the most influential voices, I think, in my opinion, at the time, where he was bringing all of this out, and everybody says, oh, this is such a conspiracy theory. He's a conspiracy theorist. And now, if you look around the mainstream and you look around the collective platform, conspiracy theorists are now being subjected to the same treatment UFO experiencers or eyewitnesses were experienced from people. The hecklers come on, the people who want to discredit you or shut you down or shut you up. Conspiracy is now the new ET thing. It's just the same formula. They're using it for different purposes. And so this book has an interesting timing as it's come out, because what I see going on right now really is a war on content. And the content that alternative media networks, people, hosts, guests, everybody has worked so hard over the last decade or so to bring out to the public with the digital age, with the internet, all of that. We're really going to start seeing a scrub down and a takedown, and content control is really one of the biggest priorities on the agendas of many of our leaderships, especially our global leadership, because I accredit that to all the profound work that everybody has done in alternative media to bring a different perspective to the platforms, to the listeners, that offers something other than the official story. And what I see happening is really like we gotta make everybody believe the official story. What we say goes, right? Well, alternative media was very instrumental in awakening a lot of people, and people were finding their way to lots of different information and having these spiritual awakenings and looking around their world and having their paradigm break down, but in a needed way so that they could really see what was going on. And I think that has made politics really impossible to run the same way that it's always ran. So when I look around the world and I'm looking at the headlines and I'm feeling out the energy, and I did 18 years worth of writings and forecasts, and when something would happen, I would go and write an article, and I did this for 18 years. And I stopped this year at the summer solstice. I said this would be my last message because I felt like I've done it. Now it's time for somebody else to do it, please. And so as I've let that go, I still watch it. I still see what's going on. It's just built into who I am. It's part of me, and it's what I do. And what I'm seeing is a really clear agenda of leadership coming in to take down these different alternative media type topics, calling them conspiracies, but not only just making fun of them or mocking them, but now we're starting to see legislation in this country come to the table and say, well, now it's going to be a criminal act to criticize certain things. And so I foresee something happening that is really disturbing. And I don't know how you guys see us from outside the country, really, but being a citizen of the United States and living here and seeing it and breathing it every single day, I can definitely see something going on. And I credit that to my unique experience as a radio host, having had conversations for a week for over, for almost 13 years, and allowing my perspective to be brought in and such by the information. So what I'm hoping this book brings to the table for readers is an experience of looking back on conversations that happened over a period of time. Remember we were going through 2012, everybody's having this big awakening, and it's, all everybody talked about for on and on and on. And there was tons and tons of books written about it, and people were doing trips everywhere, and oh my God, it was such a big deal.
Oh, and it was the end of the world too. That one was very heavily promoted. That one, and that is another fear tactic, another psyop, another fear tactic that was put so that people don't go into their actual spiritual awakening. And then when nothing, physically really happened, then it just gave more discredit to the programs out there that we're all conspiracy theorists, and the word conspiracy has become a dirty word now. Well, in actual fact, when you go a little bit deeper into that 2012, you realise that it's just become another cycle. And if you go into the Kogi and the Native American Indians, and it happened on a different level where we didn't see it instantly, because we live in a world of instant. Everyone wants everything. It's like coffee. Everyone wants everything instant. They don't seem to understand that it's a gradual situation or a gradual, energies that are coming in, that come in step by step by step by step, so that it doesn't completely freak people out.
Well, I don't think most modern day people have a clue as to what they're really experiencing in the human body.
Yeah.
I think what's happened is we are the culture of Walmarts and corporate fuckery. Okay. we are not the products of praying in the temples and working, for example, like maybe, the ancient Egyptians worked, or the ancient Celtics, or other indigenous cultures. And we all come from some kind of indigenous background. And, we just don't operate on that level anymore. So we have adapted and evolved to be more superficial to survive in the climate that we've been handed over time. I mean, the industrial age and everything that we're dealing with now in modern times, especially with the digital age, is very new. We don't really have any studies to show what the long-term effects will be on digital devices to young minds or children developing through school years. I'm still part of the generation where I grew up without digital devices, and I didn't have internet all my life. So I was still, playing outside and doing the things that most kids do when you don't have any distractions like that. Nowadays, it's very different. And you see young kids getting iPads through the school system and as young as kindergarten here. I don't know what it is where you are, but here in the United States, we have
darling. It's the same.
Well, it's all put out as progress.
Yeah.
And look how, great and modernized we are, but we really don't know. We're in unknown territory, really. And I've talked about this for a very long time, about this new psychology that's going to be coming on board. And I think you're going to start seeing it. But my concern is the people that are defining the new psychology of the digital age have me very worried, because most of them are simply running prescriptions for drugs for kids younger and younger and younger. And so we don't just have to worry about the digital age and the devices that are coming onto the stage. We have to worry about the modern medicine tactics of controlling what is considered intolerable behavior. If it's intolerable, then they have to change it. Right? They have to shape it. They have to control it. So let's give a child Prozac at 5 years old and see what happens.
Yes.
Right? So when we talk about gun control in this country, and we talk about rights and school shootings and all that, one thing we never, ever, and by the way, Sandy Hook happened right around the grand climax of 2012 here. And if you're not familiar with Sandy Hook there, I'm sure you've heard of it, because you are in the same circles as I am sometimes. And,
yep.
You have these 20 kids that are massacred, around Christmas time, around the winter solstice, around the climax of 2012. And it was just this awful pushed thing that went out into the world. Well,
and also, let me just jump in there for a little bit, darling. But it was a very big coincidence that you guys over there had a Hurricane Sandy at the same time. The names correlate.
I think it's all part of like mega rituals, to be honest with you.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Because everything that goes out through the media, mainstream media especially, does not go out without a lot of vetting. I mean, there's groups and tons of people who put these things together. And if you've ever tried to get something published through mainstream media, you'll realize very quickly how difficult it is. So the stories that do come through, I believe, are allowed to come through. And I have no doubt that the leaderships are very occult, and they work in magic and all different sorts. And, whatever it boils down to is there's always some sort of magical element to controlling populations. I used to write some articles about the Olympics opening ceremonies and the symbolism in there. And it's just right in your face. And most people aren't even realizing that that's right in their face, because they have no foundation or concept of what these symbols are or what they mean. They don't know what the background of this stuff is. So it's very easy for it to become instantly subliminal. And when something becomes instantly subliminal, then it's just bypassing the conscious mind and going right into where it lands. And then it just is the backdrop to everything you're doing. It's what's running your program, whatever that is. And if you become aware of it and you start to see it, which happened for me personally when I was going through David Icke's work. David talked a lot about the symbolism that's used in marketing by big corporations that are really, just arms of these huge entities that we really don't understand. And made a lot of sense to me because of my business background and my healing arts background. So I could understand where he was coming from an energetic standpoint, as well as from another point of view where, these things are all connected, these people are all connected. So what birthed out of that, really, and among other people, of course, was what we call the New World Order and the one world government. And I mean, we heard a lot about this in alternative media over the years. Yes, I think you would agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're starting to see the implementation of this New World Order. Now we're starting to see, I see it anyway. I don't know. I'm not sure so many other people do, but I think there are a few of them out there. They see this massive coordination happening where the restructuring of the social system is slowly but surely being implemented so that people are more easily controlled. You have chemicals coming into our bodies through our food systems and our medical systems. And, the biochemistry of our bodies is changing. And we have frequencies from 5G technologies that we've never been exposed to before happening now. The rollout has moved up to 2019. And these frequency waves mimic Pentagon crowd control technologies. I've been talking a lot about this on shows that I've been interviewed on over the last 6 months, especially because my book gives a great background to some of where these technologies began. We look at cryptocurrency, we look at the banking system, we look at all of these things that are going through massive changes. And of course they have to, because we live in an unsustainable world. We are basing our world, the way that it's able to even function is based on an unsustainable model. It's going to run out eventually. So switching from oil-based living to something else is inevitable. It's just a matter of how are they going to control it, and what is it going to cost us, and how are they going to implement the infrastructures that enable it. So when we start to talk about these very real things, people automatically go, and they stick their heads in the sand and they don't want to hear anything else about it. Or,
oh, yes, we can't talk about anything negative.
No, it's bad energy. We don't talk about that. Bad. Well, here's the deal, guys. If you don't listen to it, if you don't look at it, if you don't talk about it, it's going to happen anyway. Yeah. So, your ignorance is counted on by the individuals who are implementing this, and your distractions are numerous and vast, especially right now. And you can take your pick on which one you would like to just kind of go off and be distracted with. And in the meantime, everybody's agreeing on data collection, digital.
Oh, and we are back with Hillary Raimo, and we were talking about transhumanism, and there are a hell of a lot of programs out there. I went to see Michael Zarian about 10 years ago, and I was absolutely horrified with what he was talking about, and now it's all rolling out now. And so, Hillary, do you want to just pick up from where you were talking just before the break, sweetheart?
Well, if I can remember that far back, I'll try my best. I'm so in the moment,
I love it, and I'm really into it, sweetheart. I tell you, I'm loving every moment of it.
Oh, great. Well, that makes me happy because it's midnight here, and if it makes you happy, Nikki, then we're in a good place. I just actually saw a notification cross my laptop here that George H.W. Bush has died.
Oh.
So I have to comment on that because I feel like what's going to happen now is my country is going to go into a massive memorial for the Bush family.
See, I'll cut the head off one snake and another one's going to pop up.
Here's the thing. Okay, so what they tell kids here in the States is that you can be anything when you grow up, including President of the United States. Such BS. I want to sit there and yell it at the top of my roof, right? Well, here's the thing. When you have families that have more than one president in them, you have to wonder if we live in more of a monarchy than anything really, because we see the same thing in the Clinton family. We've seen the same thing in the Bush family. I really believe that it's just all a scam, that the voting thing and democracy and all of it really has just been a sham, and people have fallen for take the side kind of thing. And the character assassinations that happen when parties don't get their way is very similar to what people do when they don't like somebody. And, we living in the digital age, and getting back to what I was talking about prior to the break, having to do with this new society that we're watching be born. If you want to get a sneak peek into where we're headed, you have to look at China. And China has recently rolled out this thing called a social credit score. And of course, at the core of it is massive surveillance infrastructure, cameras everywhere, Big Brother watching all the time. Your behavior is rated by people that you are around and associate with. God help the people that have bad experiences with people. And God help
You know, darling, I'll just jump in here for a little minute. My mum actually lived in China for a year. She was teaching English over there, and she told me that there are no coffee shops over there. There are no places where people can go and network. And that, to me, is such a sign of keeping the people segregated and they're firewalled off in China so that they can't grow and learn about anything about spirituality. Now, isn't that interesting?
Well, it's interesting that, they don't want people networking. And networking is one of the things that, Facebook and social media is relatively new. In my book, I interview a gentleman named Stuart Trusty, who was the head technologist for Alibaba in the Asian markets. Stuart taught me about Bitcoin back in 2014, and I interviewed him on my show, and his transcript is in there. And we had many interesting conversations about where the technology is going to go. He brought me in as a visionary advisor for his worldbit.com business when he launched his own company, and it was really fascinating to sit on that council of people and listen to the vision of what cryptocurrency really offers. Now, I know a lot of people in the alternative media really don't believe it's a good thing, and I know that they really hate on it quite a bit, actually. But the intention of cryptocurrency in the beginning really was about eliminating the banking system. You cannot go into having a new financial system and needing it. You need certain things with a financial system. You need a payment system. You need accountability. You need accountability with transactions. Blockchain technology provides that. So what's come out of the whole cryptocurrency craze is the blockchain technology, and blockchain ledgers anything that can be ledgered. So, for example, your Facebook page, just kind of every time you post, it just goes off into this endless landmine of space. And we've learned recently in this past year or so that it wasn't just for no reason. Of course, your data is being studied and collected and sold for large amounts of money. To who is still questionable. We're really not quite sure who's buying all of this data, but it became very clear, and it was revealed this past year, that Facebook has been responsible for data farming its people and selling that data to whoever, the highest bidder. So we have a world that's data obsessed. And, we want to study everything about somebody so we can have them all figured out. But what we're missing that extra human element. We're missing, what they're studying really is only what you allow to go online or what you put online or, what you think you're doing online that's private, which nothing is private online, nothing period at all. Everything about your entire digital footprint is studied and collected. And, at the end of the day, most of it is for capitalistic purposes where the marketing is so now refined down to each person that, so they can just sell you stuff. Because at the end of the day, we are a capitalistic global society, and the world depends on your consumption of products. Our legacy is going to be the garbage piles that we leave in the ocean and in the land, not pyramids, not philosophical ponderings, but political disgust and disconnection and garbage. And I think that we have to turn that around. I mean, that's my own personal worldview, is that, whatever we think about is going on is fine. We can all have great discussions about it. We can all reveal stuff. We can all find the truth. But, we also have to remember that once you find it, what are you going to do then?
Yes,
right?
that's a big question for a lot of people.
And shout it out and be the town crier? You're going to go make a blog post about it? I mean, where does it go? Where does it go in the landfill of the internet, really? I mean, I think we're just being shaped to be okay with having digital lives and just go to work, pay your bills, feed your family, and get back online and feel okay and let that be enough, instead of meditating, going out in nature, finding your passion, cultivating your creative energy, going into directions that aid in your ability to become more and more evolved, which we were doing in 2012, which we were doing through all of that. And whatever level you were doing that, it was still pretty evident that's where a lot of people were. Now we are here. Interestingly enough, I have a chapter in there with Dr. David Lewis Anderson. Dr. David Lewis Anderson was doing a lot of the alternative media speaking circuits, radio show circuits. He came on my show in 2010. I was very lucky to have him come on. And he owned a private company at the time that was producing time travel technology, where he had actually successfully sent data back in time. Wow. Now, I found this kind of fascinating at the time, of course, because I had already gone through my UFO shows for the few years that I did them. Consciousness was a big topic I was bringing on my show all the time. But here we were with this man saying that this reality was true. And I said, wow, that's pretty amazing. The implications of that were vast. And we talked about ethics in that, and how if that technology were to go into the military industrial complex, oh boy, could we trust it to be used for good? No. No way, Jose, right?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So we were having a very lively, wonderful discussion. That whole transcript is in my book. And he then suddenly went into the government sector and stopped doing shows, and he pretty much disappeared off the face of the earth. And nobody really knows what he's doing now or, where his work has gone. I still, however, get lots of people who inquire, do you know where he is? I heard your show. I read your book. I'd like to talk to him. Well, so would I, to be honest with you. I would love to do a follow-up show, because if you look at our data-obsessed world now, you have to wonder, is the data only being used to sell you better sweaters or better products? I'm sure, it's like, what's the next level of that? I love sitting around having these conversations with my friends. They love coming to my house and listening to these things, because I bring up really good questions. And I say, what if this data center in Utah in the United States, and they're all over the world. What are they really doing? What is CERN really doing? Right? What are these big technologies really doing? Because let me tell you something, the apparent division that we're spoon-fed through the illusion of well-crafted media PR releases and stories really doesn't offer the full story. I mean, we have to accept that. I mean, I think everybody can accept that, the media is not going to tell you really what's going on, but they're going to incite your emotional triggers, your political triggers, the things that really upset you and get you, nitty bitty about certain things that we just loop on. Okay. Race, social issues, sexual issues, things of that sort are all wonderful topics to get a room full of people talking and stuck. Nobody ever comes out of those conversations with the answer or the resolution. It's just a constant loop of debate and opinion, and somebody eventually gets pissed off and offended, and off they go in a fit of rage. But what we really should be talking about is all those countries that appear to be not getting along, all those political parties that appear to not getting along, really have no problem getting along when it comes to surveillance systems, data, privacy. You go over and you look at who the companies and the countries that have signed up to be supporters of CERN in Switzerland. You notice very quickly that, hey, they all are friends there. They all there. They have no problems being very, very consistently cooperative in situations like that. But when it comes to being cooperative on social issues in certain countries, I really think it's just a scam. It's just a way for them to create little bickering and peckering and squabbling among people so that they get stuck and they don't look at really what's above their head. What kind of
a distraction. It's like a program for distraction to what's really going on. And that you raise a very good question. What are they doing with all this data? It's not just to sell us stuff. It's to get into our minds to see how we're thinking and to devise programs so that we can be manipulated on so many different levels. What those levels are, we don't know yet. That's very interesting.
Well, I think we actually might have a clue. And I know how you feel about the alien topic, the UFO topic, because we've had some really good conversations about that, privately, you and I. And, I say this to people all the time. I said, well, if an alien race were to come here and try to take over the world, or study the world, the best way for them to do it would be to create something that every single person would carry on their being at all times, to make sure they could be tracked 100%. And then we can create a complete digital infrastructure to support a deeper look into that. What's your cell phone? What's your smart TV? I mean, back when I was doing radio, these were conspiracies. What do you mean your phone listens to you? What do you mean your TV can reverse camera in the room? What do you mean your microwave and your refrigerator can do the same things? So there were a lot of people coming out with very good research and very good cases for this and whistleblowing on it. And, it was coming out all over. And certain people were doing different angles of that. But now we know that to be fact. Now we know that this is definitely a real thing. You go into a doctor's office here and they have tape covering the cameras on their laptops because of the realities of reverse watching through cameras and microphones. And so I have to say, well, the UFO thing was a big conspiracy type thing for many, many years. And now we're watching disclosure be one of the most talked about topics on alternative media. Now it's infiltrating mainstream media and we have these conversations going on. And it's okay to talk about it. But it's not okay to talk about the LED light systems that have spy technology built into them. I had a conversation with Chad Marlowe, the head counsel of the ACLU here, and his transcript is also in my book, and he revealed, and this is something I didn't know before I brought him onto the show, that the LED light system was basically sold to the public as a scam, thinking people are going to save, you do save a couple dollars on your electric bill. But you're guilted into thinking that it's going to save the planet, and the whole climate change thing was run on that too. So, people were spending all this money to replace their light bulbs and feeling good about themselves because, hey, they're doing something to save the planet and they're going to save some money. That is really the elementary trigger and hook that people are able to grab the public by. Saving money and convenience is always one of the two priorities somewhere along in the top 5, right? So
yeah, it's a great hook. It's a great hook, but it's a very tiny. But the results are very tiny compared to the bigger agenda out there.
Well, if you can get LED lights into somebody's home and they can be fitted with spy technology, it's really easy for someone to just infiltrate your entire life. And if you have the right person who has the right computer skills and abilities to hack into those things, then you're looking at really the wild, wild west when it comes to your digital infrastructures. There's a new movie that came out recently called 14 Cameras, and it's a very interesting movie, and I suggest people watch it because it's really the realities of a world that's going on right along parallel to your reality and what you think is going on. And we need to be more aware of these things. We need to be aware that there are people in the world who know how to and absolutely love to invade your digital life and use things. There's a lot of Bitcoin ransom going on. We digitized our medical records here. That was done under Obama, and that was a big Clinton agenda. And the reason I didn't vote for Clinton was because I didn't like her GMO policies, and I didn't like where she was going with some of the privacy agendas that she had too. And I didn't vote for Trump. I voted independent, but I definitely wasn't going to vote for her because of all the information that had come out through alternative media over the years that revealed some of her bigger agendas and her networks and stuff. And I just don't feel that she didn't deserve
and her sexual appetite, darling.
So they say. I mean, I've never seen it in person.
For small children, yeah, she's a pedophile, and it was like it's all coming out now, and I was absolutely shocked and horrid when I found that out. Apparently, it's on the dark web too. There's a video there with her revealing it. With the police actually were sick when they actually found out about it. But I've heard of all those rumors as well too, and everyone was sucked in just to vote her in just because she's a woman. And it's the same with Obama. Let's vote him in because he's black. And there are so many levels and layers under there. And you go into the Podesta files on WikiLeaks and you can see it all there, guys. So check it out. So that was very interesting. And I noticed you changed your name too when all the Hillary stuff came out. I thought, yep, I know what she's doing.
Well, let me explain that for a minute because, then this is where we go into the healing arts, right? So my name, Hillary, is spelled the same way as hers with 2 L's, and most Hillarys are spelled with 1 L. So when you Google my name, a lot of it comes up. Of course, my stuff comes up, but then Hillary Clinton's, it's just intermingled and tangled, and it's there. So when I was going through the campaign year in months, I was hosting a political show, and I was also writing a book proposal for the 9 Dots Prize for Cambridge University. And at the time, for that particular one, the question, it's one question and everybody submits a book proposal based on the one question. And then if your book proposal is chosen, then Cambridge publishes your book. So at the time, that contest was, how do modern technologies make politics impossible? So I took the perspective of alternative media because at that particular moment, Trump and Hillary are fighting it out, and all the headlines are Hillary is this and Hillary is that and Hillary is that and this and that. And I was just like, this is just awful energy to be sitting in. And of course, names and words have power. And so my name being tangled with hers and that energy at that time, I don't know, I just felt like I needed a break from that. So I changed my name on my social media platforms. It's just something, similar. But, if you Googled me on there or tried to search me, you wouldn't find me because I had changed it. And I felt so much better after I did that. And I kept it like that for a while, finished the book proposal, wrapped up the political show run. And what I realized very quickly was that when Trump came on Alex Jones and did a show with him, Roger Stone booked Alex Jones, booked Trump onto Alex Jones. And I thought, well, this is really incredible. Yeah. Because no other president candidate has ever gone on any alternative media radio show ever that I know of. I mean, if I'm wrong, please somebody tell me. But as far as I knew, this was the first time this had ever happened. And I'm sitting there going, I'm shocked.
Me too.
I was looking around going, wait a minute. Doesn't anybody see what's going on here? Yeah. Hello. And I'm like going crazy and everybody's going, what's the big deal? Who cares? I'm like, you guys are idiots. You don't see what's happening right now. This is incredible. So I based my entire book proposal for Cambridge University on the fact that alternative media had so much power at the time that a presidential candidate was coming on to speak to that audience. So, what did Trump speak to this audience? Well, he spoke the conspiracy language. He spoke the Clinton conspiracies. He spoke the New World Order conspiracies. And, at the time, and I'm sure this is probably true now, Alex has a tremendous platform with millions of listeners worldwide. And at the time, some people may not even have admitted that they were listening to Alex Jones because he's got a very unique style of presenting the information, and it can be quite a turnoff to some people. But
he's
some
very
people
passionate. Very passionate.
His numbers speak for themselves.
Yes,
and they're very high. And so Roger Stone was very smart in booking Alex Jones, because Alex Jones had the biggest audience at the time. So what Trump did was he got on there and he spoke the talk to this raw audience that was so torn out of the typical reality paradigm because they had had their psyche opened up to the information, to the New World Order, to the Illuminati, to, the things that David Icke talked about, really, but he just never really would come out and say, oh, this is David Icke's work, right? Yeah. But he would promote and provoke the same concept. So here's Trump doing the same thing to his audience. And what is the audience going to say? Oh my God. It's somebody that understands the New World Order is trying to take over the planet. I'm going to vote for him. Okay? Yeah. Because what he did was he took the heart of something that so many people wanted. Okay? Because they were sick and tired of the old patriarchy, whatever you want to call it. Okay? You can label it whatever you want, because people get stuck in names and I refuse to do that. So whatever you want to call it, people were going, wow, he might be the real deal. He's going to take on the Clintons. He knows Hillary Clinton is a Satanist and a pedophile and all this stuff, right? Because this is all the rah-rah that's going on in all media. A lot of shows we're taking it there, and we're talking about this. And I think what he did was he ignited millions of votes that would have normally gone into politics as usual had alternative media not reached the level of power that it had reached. I watched it very carefully because I was writing this. And throughout the campaign, he came here to where I live, the city where I live, and I went down to see his rally. I climbed up to the top seat and watched the whole thing from way up above, trying to get an idea of the energy. There were all different kinds of people there. There was a lot of rumors going on that only white people were showing up to his rallies. This wasn't true. That only certain ages were showing up to his rally. This just simply wasn't true. I saw all ages, all skin colors. There were people lined up in the streets, mobs and mobs of people waiting to come into this convention center. And there was only about 30, I would say there was a line drawn off where the protesters were standing, and there was only about 30 or 40 of them. Okay. So I watched this. I made note. I took pictures. And the next day, the headlines showed the picture of thousands of people walking into the convention center, mobbing it, right? And the headline read, protesters show up at the Trump rally. Okay. So it's complete lies.
Yeah.
Okay. It was lie after lie. There was one heckler that showed up in the middle of it. He just happened to pop up right where all the press cameras were and rah, 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 make a big stink, and then was escorted out by security. And I really listened to what Trump said. And what Trump said, he was still speaking the speak. Oh, we're in Afghanistan because we're harvesting all the resources out of that country and sucking it dry. That's why we're really there. Oh, we're there for the poppy fields. We have an opioid epidemic in this country that is blown so far out of proportion. It should never have been allowed to happen. And we're looking at the results of these things. And so when he was talking about these things, people who have listened to alternative information and perspectives already knew we were really in Afghanistan because of the giant mountain of mineral resources.
Frequency Radio is your...
Oh, we're back, and I'm Nikki Colombo. Welcome to the Nikki Colombo Show. And we have just had an amazing conversation with Hillary Raimo, and I'm just looking at the chat line right now, and Dr. Kayak has said, interesting how Trump hasn't stood up for Alex Jones with his media blackout. Now, that is a very interesting statement. Yes, and what you were just talking about, Hillary, was, isn't it amazing? And that he has just, that Roger Stone had him booked on the Alex Jones show. What an amazing piece of publicity. What a move.
Well, it was a move. And, what's interesting is that I've been watching to see how this is going to play out. And late spring, early summer this year, I was doing a bunch of interviews for my book launch, and I was talking a lot about how the Alex Jones platform was, I believe, really responsible for getting Trump into office. And I believe that it was strategically done. And I also had a really bad feeling about it when it was happening back in 2016. I would say to a couple of close friends of mine, I would be like, I don't know, I just have a really bad feeling about this. Something's not right. And so, following my intuitive senses on this. And now, at that time frame, we were seeing Alex Jones on our national news. We were having stories on our nightly national news, NBC, ABC, CBS, the mainstream media was talking about Alex Jones. And I thought, I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, he's on the mainstream media. This never happens. And of course, nobody else is really noticing unless you're part of, the same world I've been in for a while. And, there they were talking about his outrageous conspiracy theories and how he, made the Sandy Hook people where this was all false flag and nobody ever died. They really targeted that aspect of it, which I thought was really interesting. And here's why. Because Sandy Hook, I believe, was like a mega ritual. It was like an event that happened to offset the 2012 momentum that was really going on very strongly. I mean, how many people are really able to ground and center themselves when something bad happens? It's a real test of your spiritual skills, right? Well, Alex Jones was in the national news this year, and then suddenly he was gone, and then suddenly Roger Stone started to show up, and Roger Stone and WikiLeaks, and they're trying to make a connection between WikiLeaks and Roger Stone, but Alex Jones just got a great radio gig in Fresno, California on mainstream radio. So who's getting what they want in this? What was the trade-off? What was the deal? Let me bring Trump on your show. Think about this as a radio host. I'm going to interview Donald Trump, and I'm going to give access to my audience, millions of people, and I'm going to let him talk the talk, and it's going to go great, right? And then everybody's going to vote for him. And then he's going to be put into office based on that. Well, you can't let something like alternative media have that much power. And so it had the power, in my opinion, to bring Donald Trump to the forefront and to get him into office, because the main line really that I kept catching back then was Hillary, 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 Hillary. Such a bad person, right? She's so bad. And, we all hate her and everybody should hate her and she's crooked Hillary and all this stuff, right? But it worked because people were primed in years and years and years of the Alex Jones speak, which is not positive most of the time and is very rah-rah, very insightful. So it's kind of like he was really fueling the fire underneath everybody's bum to get them moving into a direction of believing something and all that. And I'm not saying that Alex Jones was doing that on purpose, but it sure did happen. And now we see this all coming out in media news clips and things of that sort. We just never saw Alex Jones on the national news ever. So now that he's there and Roger Stone is now there, and now these things are happening where these major players in the Russian investigation and all that are coming out saying, oh, yeah, I lied to Congress and here's what really happened. I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out for Roger Stone, WikiLeaks, and Alex Jones. Because what I see, and I'm going to share this with you because it's an intuitive vision. It's like a psychic vision. This is what I do. And what I see happening is an entanglement where you're going to have a crackdown on content. And what this gives people is a way in to say, well, look at this person who was rah-rahing about Sandy Hook, and it didn't really happen, and the way he delivers his information is awful and offensive, and people like him shouldn't be on the air. People like him should be off YouTube. People like him who talk about these things should have zero platform. No audiences, nobody to talk, no networking, just like China. None of this ability to be able to bring awareness and truth and an alternative perspective to people's minds because it's working. So they used it. Okay. Now, whether Alex Jones was just a tool in that or he had a part to play in that, I don't know. But everybody can speculate. And now we're watching the fallout of that. And I'm really curious to see Roger Stone. If you don't know anything about him, he is a notorious orgiast. Okay.
Right.
I mean, take 20 minutes online if it's still available, and you can find it someplace. You can see where all these, so we have a really interestingly dysfunctional sexual life society going on behind our leadership. And you mentioned it with the pedophilia, the kids. And we're watching the headlines say the church and all these things are coming out now. All these things that people like Alex Jones, myself, you, other people have been talking about for a long time. Things that we've been revealing as conspiracies are now really actually coming out as conspiracy fact. So you have the pedophilia coming out in the religious organizations that's slowly disintegrating people's belief in it. And you're having a breakdown there. You're having, and people look at the politicians and say, well, they should be held at a different moral standard. Well, let me tell you something. Most politicians don't even get into office unless the people that are really in power have something on them.
That's right.
Okay. And in fact, this was revealed to me years and years and years ago by a Freemasonry whistleblower who said that, him and his family were actually literally responsible for pulling in politicians, giving them what they want sexually, figuring out what they want sexually, and then giving it to them, whatever their deviances are, and filming it.
Yeah.
So that the footage would then be collateral for, extortion, bribery. Well, you're going to do what we want you to do, or we're going to put this online. And most people will just do what you want them to do because they don't want the humiliation. And we live in such a digital age now where things of that sort can be really bad for people.
And fast. Bad news travels fast, doesn't it?
No, it's not even that. It can be manipulated. People can lie.
Yeah.
People can say, video can be distorted. Audio can be distorted. There really isn't anything in the digital age that can't be distorted or hacked. So if you get the wrong person in there and they find out something on you, they will hold it over your head and extort you for money or just persuasion even. So this was really not too surprising to me what this person told me years ago, because, David Icke had talked a lot about this as well, as so have many other people. And so this was something that kind of just confirmed it for me anyway. But it was interesting because when you hear a scandal break in the grand political world, you have to wonder, well, was that just something that you had on that person and you were just waiting for it to, be useful for your own agendas? Probably. I would have to say probably most likely. Anything that we hear about anybody that comes out in a scandalous way is most likely just something that's being used against that person to destroy their life. And usually it does, because most people aren't free thinkers and they don't have enough sense to say, well, wait a minute, there's got to be more to this. They just jump on the bandwagon, take sides, and off they go. And we can see that very clearly in our social engineering now. People are being really programmed to be triggered by whatever, emotional trigger they can be triggered by, because most people haven't done the healing process and most people have no clue really who they are. We still have a large majority of people on this planet who are very asleep. And although we've had great awakenings and we have lots of wonderful, fabulous people doing great things in the world, we still mock people for their spirituality. We mock people for their wisdom. If an older woman I'm 45 years old, so I consider myself an older woman. Okay. I don't mean to offend anybody older than me, but in being a 45-year-old woman, life is much different for me now than when I was 20 or 30, right? Or 35 or even 40. So we're growing through our life experience, and the wisdom that comes from that in indigenous cultures is considered sacred.
Yes.
We don't have any kind of bar set in the West here, in the United States, really, for people to be able to bring their wisdom to something and have a way of knowing how to respect that, let alone implement it.
Yeah, well, the divine feminine has been suppressed for so long, and we've been living in such a patriarchy kind of system for so long now. It's finally seeping out a little bit now where, the energies are coming in for this divine feminine. But what you said before about how not many people are, most of the people are asleep, I have to be reminded of that over and over again, because I'm surrounded by spiritual people talking about stuff all the time, that when I do actually come across someone who's totally unawake, it really is a bit of a shock to me, because I've been on this journey for 10 years now. For me it was easy because I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, and it's easier for me to understand what's going on. But for people who haven't had anything like that, or haven't been exposed to any kind of spirituality or anything to do with conspiracies, it's very hard for them to sort of, understand what's going on, because they have an identity crisis. So, finally this divine feminine is coming through, and we need to push that a little bit further on. And I'm really in for, women's self-empowerment, and that's why I have a lot of women on my show.
Well, I think most people are really excited to see the empowerment of the feminine energy come to the forefront. But we also have to remember that it's equally important that the divine masculine energies do as well. Yeah. Because the Me Too movement that's here and spreading really bonds women, the feminine energy, in victimization.
Oh, yes.
And I totally get needing support and needing to talk about your experiences. But the thing is that there are different levels of experiences, and there are different stages of the healing process that have to be taken into consideration. And what I've watched here in this country happen is the weaponization of victimization, meaning that these women come forward, and I'll use the Kavanaugh case that just happened recently here in our midterm elections, where we had a new Supreme Court judge who was going to be sworn in, and suddenly there were, all these women coming out of the woodwork saying that he groped them in college. So they stopped the whole event, the whole confirmation, to investigate this, and it was just completely used and manipulated by all the parties involved. And, this woman may have had a real thing happen to her, but, groping is not the same thing as rape. So there's a statute of limitation on that doesn't, everybody was getting confused, and I watched everyone's reaction. It was just reaction, 100% reaction. Oh my God, we believe her. We have to embrace her. We believe her. Well, that's wonderful and great, but then it came out that another witness had lied. And so the whole stalling of the confirmation really was the agenda, because the one party, the Democrats, had the information. They sat on it for like 15 days or so before they allowed to leak it to the press. And then when it was leaked to the press, it was such a time crunch where his entire credibility was at stake. And everybody was really, I wasn't jumping on the bandwagon for it, because something didn't feel right with me either. And it turned out that I was right about that as well. So the thing that happens when women bond in victimization, they bond in disempowerment. It's an automatic disempowerment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Being a victim really puts you in, Yeah.
When I see celebrities standing up and, calling out people in the industry about their experiences and stuff like that, and everybody rising up, and I went to the ESPY Awards in LA this past summer, and I was sitting there in the middle of Hollywood and watching these awards, and they come out with hundreds of women on their finale part of the show, and they were all women that were sexually molested by the Olympic trainer. Vassar, I think his last name was. And they were, healing, and it was strong, and it was powerful, and there was a presentation with it, and it was compelling, and it was well done. It was a Hollywood at its finest. And I'm sitting here thinking, all these women are bonding in victimization. Okay, let's see what happens with this. So fast forward a few months later, and we're watching the same stories come out, and we're watching the discredit of men just from the accusation. We're watching guilt just from the accusation. That to me, that's wrong. Okay, if somebody is going to come up and accuse you of doing something, then let there be due process in that. Let the system work. Go in there, do what you need to do to investigate it. And if there's nothing criminal found, then leave it and let the healing process continue. Because not everybody needs to nail someone to a wall in order to be healed. Okay, that's a misconception in my opinion. And so when women bond in victimization, we have kind of a
well, it perpetuates the hurt. It perpetuates that state of mind where you're totally in the victim program, where you're giving your power away because you haven't healed. A lot of those women probably don't understand any of the healing techniques. It's up to them to go out there and discover those healing techniques so they can move past this. We've all had our stuff, and it's our responsibility for us to go out there and heal our own stuff, because no matter what you do, the other person, no matter if you get revenge or justice or anything like that, that really, for me, that doesn't matter what happens to that other person. What I'm interested in is healing myself and growing through that, because you become a stronger person and a stronger woman when you actually deal with this and get through it. You are transformed, and it puts you in that place of power where anything else that comes along, you can handle that. But these poor women are still stuck in the victim program, and so they're ripe for all that kind of stuff to perpetuate and happen to them again over and over and over again. And that Me Too movement seemed to, on one level it was really facilitating that, poor me victim program. That's really sad.
Well, it is sad. But see, the thing is, too, is that it sets back the emerging divine feminine energy that is based in empowerment. It sets it back. And it sets it back because you then have a greater divide between men and women.
Yes.
And if you look at the energy between a man and a woman, it's enough to produce life, right? It's almost like a nuclear reaction, literally, in a cellular level. And we need the balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine energies in order to create life. So when we see a distinct agenda to separate that in some way, or to damage it, or to wound it more, I mean, it's been wounded, I think, a lot. A lot of women and men both can say that they don't trust the opposite sex, that there's a lot of issues going on, a lot of things that happen, because it's such a powerful relationship. It's such a powerful relationship that it can create life. It's created you. It created me. It created everybody listening to this, right? It's such a powerful thing. But if you diminish it, if you demean it, if you make it pornographic, if you turn it into a revenge, hate-filled thing, you're doing a lot to separate that. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Golden Compass, but it's kind of it's a child's story, right? It's one of my favorite.
With Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I think anybody listening who hasn't, please go watch it. It's really worth your time to see the storyline, because it really gives you a wonderful insight into what it means to separate from your elemental essential self, your spirit animal, your wild instinctual side, that is really what we're here. Now, I've moved into art. I've been in the art world for the last few years, and my work has won awards, and I really love working in it, and it's just another evolution of my spiritual work. And the creative energy, the creative power is very similar to what we experience in spiritual awakening. The creative power, the ability to find aesthetics and beauty and connection, the ability to go shamanically deep into your emotions and to have no judgment on what you're feeling and what you're putting on your canvas or whatever your medium is something that is so essential that it reminds me of that movie, because if you are ever separated from your creative power, the way that movie walks you through that separation, you don't have the same kind of life force that you do when you're connected to it. So what I see happening on the collective platform really is an attempt to assassinate the bond that we each have with our deepest, most primal and essential energy force. And if you can be separated from that energy force, then you can be assassinated in a sense. Right? What happens to an artist whose creative power and ability to get into that zone is taken away? Right?
Well, it's like writing block. It's like a writing block.
Writers, artists, singers. I mean, anybody who does anything passionately, and you're required to center into that creative energy to do it. You wouldn't be able to do it if you were, that was disconnected. So I see it this way. I see it that we really are here to do whatever we're doing, to be human, to bridge the spiritual, philosophical aspects of our intuitive wisdom, to nurture that, to honor it in ourselves as well as in others, and to allow the continuation and the never-ending revealing of that. And when we stop doing that, that's when we really kind of hit a brick wall, or we go into depression, or, we go into areas that don't support that. But it's all really useful stuff, because then you can learn from it and you can take your lessons and you can use it as fertilizer, to grow back a even stronger connection. So there's ebbs and flows. It ebbs and wanes. It comes and goes. It's kind of like, we're in it and then we're not in it. And now what our culture is doing is criminalizing emotions and making it really just a bad thing to feel anything, whether it's joy or anger or grief or passion or, God forbid, pleasure. Right?
That sounds like the movie Equilibrium with Christian Bale, where they weren't allowed to feel. You were considered that, and they just incinerate you. That was the type of society that they were living in. And you know what else, Hilary? We've got about 2 minutes until the break, but I'm just going to mention to people. For me, with this divine feminine, this divine masculine, for me, when that is separated, it's stopping your spiritual growth, because for me, it's the divine marriage. When we come into this world, when we're in our mother's tummy, the embryo hasn't decided what sex it's going to be. We're kind of androgynous. And so, we grow into this world and we might be a female, but we actually have male aspects in us and vice versa. And once we, have that divine marriage within us, where I embrace a lot of the masculine in me. And I seem to attract a lot of women around me that are like that, because we're not afraid to embrace that masculine, divine masculine side of us, and also pull out the divine feminine when we need that. And I think there's a lot of problems in the world, because there are a lot of people out there that have separated themselves from the power there that creates that force. Like you said about that force, we've got to have both to have that force, particularly if you're an artist. So for me out there, there's definitely some sort of program, and the me, and what you brought in tonight with the Me Too, that was a very interesting way of looking at it, because it's designed to keep people, disempowered into their full power. It's designed to separate us on so many levels. It's designed to, demonize the men and put them in situations where they're being accused of stuff where they haven't really, done anything, or it's been, over exaggerated, and all the other women jump in and create all this stuff. So for me, it's the inner marriage of bringing both of those energies together inside us, and then projecting that out onto the outside world. And that, for me, creates balance. For me, it's all about balance now. So I hope you guys can get out there and do a little bit of research about the inner marriage. And Hillary really did bring up some fantastic points tonight. I'm sitting here being triggered off 1,000,000 miles an hour. I can't wait till I can get out and do some more research, because and re-listen to tonight's episode, because I'm going to be going off on a tangent and discover. And we're back, and I'm Nikki Colombo, and welcome to the Nikki Colombo Show. And we have our special guest tonight, Hillary Raimo. And Hillary, for people out there that are just waking up and are discovering all this could be actually quite frightening with all the stuff that's happening with the transhumanism and everything. What are your suggestions on tools and techniques for healing and coming out of the fear zone and all the good stuff that is out there to help us deal with all this stuff that's going on?
Well, I think people need to be more human, and I think they need to be more compassionate for other people who are human.
Yes.
Being human means that we are diverse. We have different emotional spectrums. We have different mental spectrums, physical, spiritual. Everybody comes from something different. And if we learn to stop judging everything and just really meeting things as blank slates and just letting that happen instead of meeting it with expectations and prejudgments and all sorts of things. Like, the difference between when you're meeting somebody you have already thought about or Googled or maybe you have an opinion of versus when you meet somebody who you have no information about and you don't know where they're coming from. So you have to find that out in a matter of time and just the interaction. So I think if we were to meet each other and even ourselves in that blank slate type state, we might actually have deeper, richer, more synchronistic connections with people. And I think that's the key of breaking the spell of the control and the perceived fear, because most of the fear is psychological fear. We have instinctual fear, which is necessary. For example, if you're walking through the woods and a bear comes and, your life is in danger, your physical life is in danger. So you'll react to that differently. That fear is very different than psychological fear. Oh, I'm afraid so-and-so is going to do this, or what happens if I lose my job and stuff like that. That's psychological fear. I think 9/11 brought a lot of that in. A lot of that was a big gateway to let in the big fear entity that's kind of wrapped around this world. And we have to learn to disconnect from it, but we also have to learn that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to talk about the scary stuff, the hard stuff. We have to, because in the healing process, what you refuse to look at, what you resist, persists. So there's a mantra in this country, resist Trump, resist Trump. Well, hello. Anybody who's a healer worth their weight knows that if whatever you're resisting inside of yourself is going to be subconsciously overruling pretty much everything you do, and will usually show up in the form of self-sabotage. You're just triggering all of your emotional stuff, your physical stuff, your mental stuff that you haven't healed yet. And maybe you don't have a strong enough spiritual connection yet to be able to fully embrace that and let synchronicity, let love, let the higher elementals come in and being able to guide you versus fight or flight. Fight or flight is a very real response, and most people come from that. You don't really know anybody until you see them angry. And I love it when people say, oh, I don't get angry anymore. And that's such a lower life form thing. And I just don't do it. I'm like, well, that's great. But I bet you if I were a fly on the wall at your family's gathering at a holiday, I guarantee you'd get mad at something. Okay, because it's usually the ones that declare they don't have any issues that have the most issues. Or that, because people who have really gone through a healing process, really intent on doing that, mindful of doing it, they're not bragging about it. They're not going, oh, I'm healed and I'm great and I have no issues and I have no blockages and, therefore I'm better than everybody. That's the biggest ego trip the ego will take you on.
Oh, yeah, the
Okay.
spiritual arrogance out there at the moment. I'm a truth seeker, I'm this, I'm that. And I just think, oh my God, because to me, it's all a process. And for me, what you said before about, it's just about discovering yourself and your shadow side. Because if you keep ignoring it, it just comes back at you harder and harder until you are almost forced to deal with that shadow side and heal that shadow side within yourself. For me, it's about all going inside and dealing with all your past traumas, whatever's happened to you in your life, whatever's going on in your life at that particular time. And, we get things thrown at us in stages, and for me, it's not like you don't really arrive at a destination, because it seems to be a process, because of these waves coming in, and these waves of energy that come in, they go up and then they go down, up and down, up and down. For me, it's about riding the wave now, instead of trying to hang on to the side, getting sloshed with the waves, because it's just too hard to hang on. So I've learned to let go and let my higher self come in and take the wheel for a little while, having absolute trust and faith in that, knowing that I'm going to be steered in the right direction.
I think we also have to get a thick skin. We can't let everything bother us. We have to really understand that, things really do happen for a reason. And that one person you think might be in your life forever and then suddenly isn't. Well, it wasn't meant to be. And we need to just move on and accept that, and go into the open opportunities that await us outside of that, in letting it go. And the more that we practice that, it's either going to make you hard and bitter, or it's going to open you up in different ways. And hard and bitter has its own taskmasters, and they teach very specific lessons. And I always look at it like this: nobody's doing anything wrong. Everybody's doing exactly what they need to be doing. They're surrounded by the people they need to be surrounded by, even experiences that are painful and cause suffering and different emotional landscapes come out of it. You're still meant to go through that. There's something in that experience that you have that is meant for you. And you may not be able to see it at that moment. You may be too deep in it. And that's part of your healing process. And maybe you need friends and family and loved ones around you who can help support you through that. Know when to ask for help. I have seen way too many people be very prideful with this. Oh, I'm not going to ask for help. Or if they do ask for help.
I went through that. I had to jump over that wall, and I had to jump over and go, swallow my pride, because I'm a Leo. I had to swallow that pride and go, you know what? I need help here. I really need help. And it came.
Yes.
It's amazing. When you just ask the universe, God, I just need help. Please help me,
Well, it's getting to the asking point that's really hard for some people. Some people have a really difficult time asking for help and accepting help, and not really knowing, how to let go of expectations of what that help should be. I mean, maybe help is a friend showing up and taking you to lunch, or, listening to you while you cry through it, or, going through whatever it is. You can't feel bad about any of it. And you just need to make room for it and let it happen. And for God's sake, knowing ourselves is one of the hardest things that we'll ever do in our lifetime. It's very easy to be distracted. It's very easy not to do it. It's very easy to pretend and go on and on and on that, you're fine and it's everybody else and all that. But, it's still going to find you. And how do we know it's still finding us? Because you will manifest the same situations over and over and over
again. Yes.
In different ways, right. Maybe with different people, maybe, yes. Different subtleties will not be the same, but it's still the same big lesson. And you're just going to get hit on the head with it over and over and over again until it clicks and you say you're done with it and you let it go. Nobody can do it for you either. You can't go to a healer. You can't go to your sister or your cousin or your friend or your partner. It's really something that you have to get internally before it's going to actually be released. Why? Because our thoughts are powerful. I mean, this is a spiritual wisdom and a spiritual awakening for people when they become aware of this simple truth. Your thoughts are so powerful that your paradigm is instantly created around them. So if you're having thoughts that you're not worthy of love, well, hello, you're going to manifest all of these situations that prove to you you are not worthy of love, because it's your mantra in your head and your thoughts are going on and on about it. Right? You may admit it to somebody here and there, maybe not, but because it's coming from you and it's what's shaping your reality. Success comes from the changing of the tides in the mental system, because the mental system steers the emotions. And if it's all part of how you're made, and we can't reject the parts of us that we don't like or the parts of other people we don't like. We have to be willing to accept and be, compassionate towards ourselves and other people for being such a wild and beautiful landscape of human expression. Doesn't that sound much better than saying, oh, I don't want her in my psychic circle tonight because I don't like her energy? Ew. We don't talk to her.
Oh, I know. That's such polarized thinking. Oh, my God.
Oh, yes, my God. Exactly. She's free for anger. She's angry. Well, let me tell you something, ladies and gents. Anger is one of the most brilliant teachers you will ever come across.
Yeah, it is.
Because anger really can be righteous. I mean, there are righteous reasons to be angry and to express anger. And anger can be a laser focus, stick to what the problem is and just talk about that. It's when we start to bring in things that happened to us 6 months ago, 6 years ago, what you did last week. You pull in all this stuff that has nothing to do really with the present moment, right? It's has nothing really to do with what you're really mad at that moment. It's what's been brewing under the surface that hasn't been expressed that comes out volcanically.
Oh,
and, we have to learn.
Anger for me is better than despair.
Well, volcanoes are very useful in creating new land, creating new earth.
Absolutely, yeah.
My anger, when it comes out, boy, everybody knows it. I'll tell you that right now. I'm an Aries, so I'll bolt
I know that fire, babe. I've seen it online.
Well, it's one thing to be online, and it's another thing to be in person. So, but my anger has changed over the years, because before I learned that it was necessary for me to stay focused, laser-like on what I was angry about, and to pick and choose the things that I became angry about. It was all over the place. It was like, just spilling all over the place. So it's a growth process. Everybody's in a different stage, and we just have to accept it and see it for what it is. Okay. And sometimes that's hard to do, and sometimes it's easy. It depends on everybody's individual situations. There is no one way to embrace everyone's uniqueness. One of the things I rejected from the New Age industry over the years was that this whole we are one concept. Well, we're not all one, and I'm going to break it to you. We're one as far as having organs, lungs, heart, veins, that sort of thing. We're all one physically for the most part. But we're not all one when it comes to life experience, the things that have shaped us, the things that have made us who we are. Your life experience isn't going to be the same as mine. So when we come to the table to talk about things, my expression and experience is going to come through in my opinions or what I'm saying or how I'm speaking or what I choose to speak about. Same thing for you. And the golden opportunity lies in the ability to be able to find the treasure in the conversation versus trying to make a point or pull in a debate, and I want to be right and I want to stimulate your stuff. I mean, who wants to really have a conversation like that, right? Those happen a lot, though. The higher level of conversations that we need to be having really have to do with the ability to honor the synchronicity in the moment that we're having the conversation. Well, what's going to be revealed in this conversation? What is it that has brought me to you to have this conversation? What's the higher message? What's the higher meaning? You need to look for that. You need to experience that in your interactions with people. Not everybody knows how to do it. Not everybody's comfortable with it. But God, when you find somebody who is, trust me, it's worth taking the extra time to have those conversations because they're guidance from a higher power, whatever you believe in. It doesn't even matter. And it's bringing you into this moment to have this conversation for a reason. And when that reason is revealed, it's miraculous. But you can't get to that miraculous state if you're filled with, judgment, triggers, things that you're thinking about what you're going to say before the person's even done speaking. You're not actively listening. You're not consciously mindful in the conversation. And it's your inability to do that creates a non-magical moment. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. My ex-husband was doing that all the time. Every time I would be talking to him, I could see his eyes flashing left to right, thinking about what he was going to say back. He was more interested in talking about what he was going to say instead of listening to me. And it used to drive me mad.
That's probably why he's your ex.
That's right. And being a singer, you become a very good listener, and listening becomes a really good skill. It's a skill that a lot of people have actually, have lost in the last, God knows how long. And so I could actually see him flickering his eyes from left to right, thinking, what am I going to say next? It used to drive me nuts. And I just couldn't communicate with someone like that because I just wasn't being heard with my own feelings about what I just wanted to resolve it. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to, even just talk about it and have a bit of a sounding board or just to vent, so I could kind of get it off my chest, not necessarily having something to fix me, but just to vent. And then when I didn't have that, it would build up and build up and build up and build up, and then eventually, the relationship broke down, and thank God I'm away from that now because it made me very unheard, very isolated, very lost, very, all those horrible feelings of not being heard and venting it out and not being able to discover and soundboard off somebody else, their point of view, which would give me a different opinion on how to look at the situation. It held me in a trap, actually, not having someone really listen to me. Yeah.
Well, I think listening, radio hosts are good at that. I mean, one of the things that I became really good at was listening because my shows were never scripted. I never, it was just organic, off the cuff conversations. And in order to do that well, I had to listen. You have to listen. If you're not listening, then you're not participating in the moment. You're somewhere else. And we all know how frustrating that is when you're trying to talk to somebody and they're distracted or they're looking at their phone or, they're texting somebody while you're speaking or, that's a big reality of our digital age. The distractions that we have now are even worse and make it even more difficult to really be active, present, conscious listeners. Yes. And how many are listening for the higher message versus something else? Okay. Because you can be listening to a conversation. Maybe you're listening for the person to say the right thing, or you're listening to the person to reveal something, or, you're trying to find out more about them simply by analyzing what they're saying. That's not active, consciously, mindfully listening. That's an agenda. Your own thoughts are brewing around. And I can promise you anyone who's psychic or intuitive can feel that a million miles away and will probably stay away from you because they're not interested in having those conversations. They don't want to have the hard conversations. They want to have the higher level, next level conversations. And we should be having those conversations. It's important for us to discuss things on a philosophical level as well as a spiritual level. But it's hard for people to do because if they haven't gone through their spiritual awakening or they're just beginning, there's no judgment in that. It's just where they're at. It's very difficult to have conversations of that level with somebody who is already on the other side of that and has fully embraced it. I mean, the difference between the two people. You can tell immediately when somebody,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think the question is, how do we resolve the conflict Because we look at the world and we see the conflict going on and we get all, involved with that. But really, I've always talked about the macro being a mirror for the microscopic levels of ourselves. So whatever happening on the collective level is a mirror for whatever's going on in the closer micro aspects of your life. So for example, what's going on in your family dynamics are probably very similar to whatever it is you're perceiving on the collective level. So it's an interesting trip to take to start to look at that and pick it apart and see it, because the mirrors are strong. And a lot of people haven't learned to look into strong mirrors. They would rather reject them, not do it at all, find something else to do. Again, it's really similar. I mean, it's all the same thing. You're just doing the same thing that we've been talking about for this 2 hours. It's like you really have to show up and be present and mindful and be grounded and know who you are. And if you're not there yet, just keep working towards that and it'll get easier and more insightful. And then the real reasons will start to reveal themselves as to why you've incarnated now and why you're looking and feeling and experiencing all of this. We're all here on the same time, on the same planet. I mean, what are the odds of that?
Oh, the synchronicity is absolutely amazing. I have those kind of thoughts about that all the time. Isn't it an amazing time to be alive, considering all the crap that we go through here? We're growing and learning and becoming very powerful beings, discovering how powerful we are and how much love we really do have in our hearts. And I know that we can do this. I know that we can change. We can transmute all this negative stuff and come out on the other end as beautiful, powerful beings that we all originally are. It's just a matter of just getting rid of the layers that are on top of us that are holding us down. Once we reveal those layers, it all comes back to yourself. And then you become self-realized. You go on that journey and you're projecting out and you're finding everything and you're trying to research and blah, 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 blah. And it all comes back to you. Isn't that amazing? That to me is just brilliant. Ironic. You mean it's me? Oh my God.
I'm the problem. Well, it's true. It's true. So, the first thing people say to me, well, I listen to you, I hear you talk, I'm intrigued, but I don't understand where I start. Well, I'm like, well, you've already started. Everything that you've done up until this point has given you some kind of perspective or place to be, right? It's defined you in some way. So, if you don't like what you're manifesting, or you don't feel good about your surroundings, or, where you live, or your partnerships, or things of that sort, then you have to take a look at why. And then you have, just like you did with your ex-husband that you shared earlier, it's like you couldn't bridge the gap in the communication, and it became too much for you because your spirit wasn't being able to express its highest expression. You needed to vent. People have to realize that, even as I sit here talking to you, sounding calm and grounded in what I'm talking to you about, I'm human. I might wake up tomorrow and need to talk about something that's really bothering me to my partner, or to have some kind of conversation with one of my friends. It's like we have somehow forgotten that we're human first. And then spiritually, we're already here. So it's like we kind of get it, but we have to really get it. And we have to translate it and process it through our incarnation right now, which is the human form. And we have to respect the human form. And we have to respect all that means in order to accomplish that. Well, that's not really a small thing. So, it's not like you can just go and have this awakening and you're done with it and then suddenly you're there. I think you have to fall down and bump your knees and scrape, your knees a couple times, or your hands, or whatever.
Yeah, baby.
And you have to hit your head on a couple things.
Yes, I sure have. Woo-hoo.
And then you realize And then you realize that this isn't that fun anymore. Like, why am I doing this? What do you? So it's an awakening of a sorts, and then you start to make changes and come to different stages of realization that, of exactly what that means, because it means different things for everybody, and what worked for you may not work for other people. So what happens when we start to see other people do things a certain way and then think we have to do it the same way? We need to give ourselves permission to be different and unique in our life expressions and how we do things. And we have to find compassion.
Diversity and keep our diversity. Now we've got about a minute and a half to go. Hillary, would you like to tell our audience where they can contact you and where they can get your book and all your links, sweetheart?
Sure. My book is available on Amazon, Amazon UK, Barnes & Noble, and Lulu.com. You can go to my website, HillaryRaimo.com, and you can find everything I have going on there. I do consultations for projects and businesses and individuals of that sort. And, I'm doing my art stuff. So I have shows all over, and people can see my online portfolio there as well, and all the other things I've done too. So some of my YouTube channel is still up. I have some interviews on there that I've done, especially this year, and some other shows and that sort of thing. So if people want a really good piece of it, they can just get my book and read through it. And if you can get from cover to cover, I will congratulate you, and you'll see exactly what I mean on the point that I've been making this whole 2 hours.
That's wonderful. Well, darling, it was absolutely fantastic to have you on the show. I'm so glad we caught up after all these years. You're just a library on legs, sweetheart, and such an inspiration for all us women and men out there too. Thank you so much. And I love you so much. Thank you for coming on the show.